In this video, I will show you how to perform CRUD operations on products using ReactJS and JSON-Server. So in this page, we can read the available products. We can click on this button to create a new product. Then let's fill the form. Let's select an image. And let's submit the form. So here we can see that we have this new product, and this is the product image. Also, we can update the product. So let's click on this edit button. Let's update the name, the price, and the description. Then let's select a new image. Let's submit the form. So here we can see that we have a new name, a new price, and this is the new image. And to delete the product, we can click on this delete button. So in this video, I will show you how to perform CRUD operations on products. Then in the next video, I will show you how to implement the search functionality, the pagination functionality, and how to sort the table data. To create a new React application, we need first to install Node.js. So first let's check if Node is installed or not. So we can open the command prompt, or also we can open Windows PowerShell. Then here we can type node --version. So here we can see that Node is installed, and this is the version that I have. If Node is not installed, then we need to install it. So let's go to the browser, and here we can type Node.js. Let's go to the first link. Then we can download and install Node.js. Now let's create a new React project for our e-commerce application. So let's open the command prompt. Then npx, create React app. Then the name of the application, we can call it Best Store. Now let's close this window. And let's open this folder using VS Code. Then let's delete useless files from the source folder. So we can delete all the files except index.js. Then let's update index.js. So let's delete useless import statements. And let's delete all of this code. Then let's create the app component. We can create it just here. Then let's return a fragment. And in this fragment, we can display the title of this page. So let's add h2 element. So we can write welcome to our website. Now let's save the file, and to run this application, let's open the terminal. And here let's type npm start. And we obtain this application. Now let's add Bootstrap to our application. So here we can type Bootstrap. Let's go to the first link, then docs. Then let's add Bootstrap CSS and JavaScript from the CDN. So let's copy the link element. And let's add it to index.html. So let's add it just after the title. Then let's add Bootstrap JavaScript. So let's copy the script element. Let's add it just here. Then let's add Bootstrap icons. So here let's click on icons. And let's copy this link element. Let's add it in the head. Now let's save the file and let's close it. Now let's change this icon. So I want to use this icon instead. So let's copy this file and let's add it to our application. So I will add it to the public folder. So now let's use this icon instead of the default one. So let's go to index.html. So let's delete this. And let's write /icon.png. So let's copy this. And let's use it here as well. Let's save the file. And here we can see that we have this icon. Now let's create two additional components, the navbar and the footer. So we need to create a new file, but first let's create a new folder and a source. Let's call it components. Then under components, let's create a new file. Let's call it layout.js. Then let's create and export the navbar. So we will not use the default export because we want to export many components from the same file. Instead, let's use the named export. So let's write export, then function, and let's call it navbar. Then let's find the source code of the navbar from the website of Bootstrap. So here let's find navbar, which is this one. Then let's copy the source code of this navbar. Let's paste it here. Then let's replace class with class name. So let's select class equal, then Ctrl-Shift-L, then class name equal. Then here we can see that we have an error. So we need just to close this element. Also, we need to close the input element. Now let's save the file. And let's use this component. So let's go back to index.js. And we can add the navbar just above the h2 element. So we can add it just here. Let's press enter to import this component. Let's save the file. And here we can see that we have this navbar. Now let's update the navbar. So we can change the name of the application. We can add some space at the left and at the right. And also we can delete this form. Then we can move this drop-down list at the right. So first let's change the background color of the navbar. So we can delete this class. And you can replace it with background white. Then we can add a border bottom and a shadow. Then to add some space at the left and at the right, we can replace container fluid with container. So let's delete fluid. And here we have the title of our application. So let's change the title and let's write best store. Also, let's add an image before the name of the application. So just here, let's add the image. Then let's add the source. So the image that we will use is this image. So just here, let's add /icon.png. Then let's add additional attributes. So we need to add the alt, the width of the image, and here we have this class which allows us to add some space between the image and the name of the application. So we will add margin end of 2 units. Then here we have this UL that contains some items. So this is the home item, this is the link, this is the drop-down list, and here we have this item. So for this home item, we can delete the active class, and let's replace it with text dark. Then let's use this class with the other items. So we can use it with this item, and let's rename this item. So here let's write contact. Then we can delete this item. We can delete the form as well. And to move this drop-down list at the end of the navbar, we need to create a new UL element. So let's create a new UL element just here. Let's add the class. And we can copy this class from the first UL element. Then let's put the drop-down list inside this UL element. So we can move this li element, and let's put it just here. Also, we can use the text dark class with this drop-down list, so we can add it just here. Then let's rename the drop-down list. So here we can write admin, for example. And let's rename the items of this drop-down list. So this can be products, and the next item we can call it profile. And the last one we can call it logout. Now let's save the file. So here we can see that we have some space at the left and at the right. We have the name of the application and we have this image. We have two items with the same color, which is text dark. Then here we have the drop-down list. So when we click on it, we can see that we have 3 items. Now let's create the footer of this application. So we can create it in layout.js. Then let's return a div. Then let's add some bootstrap classes. So we can display the text in the center, we can add some paddings, and we can add a top border. Then let's add an image and the name of the application. So we will display the same image of the navbar, we will provide it with this width, and we will add some space between the image and the name of the application. Now let's save the file, and let's render the footer component. So we can add it just after the h2 element. Let's press enter to import it. Now let's save the file. And here we can see that we have this footer. Now instead of displaying this h2 element, let's create and render the home component. So first let's create a new folder under source. And let's call it pages. Then in the pages folder, let's create a new file. Let's call it home.js. Then let's create and export the home component. Let's return a div. So this div is a bootstrap container. We have top and bottom margin, and this is the title of this page. Now let's save the file and let's render the home component. So let's delete h2 and let's render the home component. Let's save the file. And here we have the home component. So we can see that we have some margin at the top and at the bottom. So to be able to navigate between the different pages of this application, we need to install a package called ReactRouter. So let's take a look on the documentation website of this router. And here let's type ReactRouter. Let's go to the first link. Then let's select picking a router. So in this video I will show you how to use BrowserRouter. So first let's install this package. Let's open a new terminal. So now we have two terminals. This one is used to start our application, and in this second terminal we will install a React router. So here we have to type npm I like install, then React router DOM. Let's press enter. And now the package is installed correctly. So to use this router, let's put all the components of our application into a browser router. So just here let's write browser router. Let's press enter to import this component from React router DOM. And you can see that it has been imported. So let's close it. Then we need to put all the pages of our application into the routes component. So we have only one page for the moment, which is the home page. So let's cut this component and let's create the routes component. Let's press enter to import it. Then inside the routes component we can define the different routes of our application. So let's create the first route. So we need to use the route component. Then let's define the path attribute. So this route will be accessible at /, which is the root of our website. Then we need to define the component that should be displayed when we go to this route. So let's add the element attribute. And here it is equal to the home component. This means that when we go to /, we will render the home component. Then let's create additional components that we will use with the other routes. So in the pages folder, let's create other components. So let's create contact.js. So we can make a copy of the source code of the home component. Let's copy all of this. And let's paste it here. Let's rename this component. And here let's write contact us. Let's save this file. And let's create a new file. So this one, let's call it notfound.js. So this component will be displayed by default if the route is not defined. So let's call it notfound. And here let's write page not found. Let's save the file. Then let's create two additional routes. So this one will be accessible at /contact. And this one is the default route. So just here let's write star. So when we go to /contact, we will display the contact component. Let's press enter to import this component. Otherwise, we will display not found. Now to use the React router, we have to update the different links of our application. So instead of using the A element, we have to replace it with the link element, which is an element defined in React router. So first let's update the Navbar. Then we need to replace the A element with link. So let's delete A and let's write link. Let's press enter to import this component from React router. So we can see that it has been imported. Let's close it here. Then let's replace href with the to attribute. And then we have to provide the route. So when we click on this link, we will go to the root of our website. Then let's update the home item. So let's delete the A and let's replace it with link. And let's replace href with to. So this is the /route. Then let's update this item. So this is link. Let's replace href with 2. And the URL here will be /contact. So this URL is already defined in index.js, and it allows us to display the contact component. Then we have the drop-down list. So the A element that we have here is not a link, so we should not update the A element of this drop-down list. Instead, we have to update the A element of the different items of this drop-down list. So here let's delete the A element and let's replace it with link. Then let's replace the href with 2. So for products, we suppose that we have a URL called /products. For profile, let's do the same thing. So let's suppose that we have a route called /profile. And for logout, let's suppose that the route is called /logout. Now let's save the different files. So for the moment we have the home component because we are on the root of our domain. Let's click on contact, and this is the contact component. So if we click on products, and because for the moment we don't have this route /products, we can see that we have page not found. So this is the not found component. Let's click on the name of our application. So we are on the root of our domain, and this is the home component. We can click again on contact. We can see that we have /contact, and this is the contact component. To perform CRUD operations on products, we need a backend application. So in this course, we will use JSON-Server, which is a REST server. So just here we can type JSON-Server GitHub. Then let's go to this first link, which is at github.com. Then here we can see that the latest available version of JSON-Server is version 1. But here the documentation of version 1 is not complete. So we can click on this link to go to the documentation of the previous version. Then we can use this documentation, but this documentation is not compliant with version 1 of JSON-Server. So instead of installing version 1 of JSON-Server, I will install JSON-Server of this documentation, which is JSON-Server version 0.17.4. So we can copy this command and we can use it. Then let's create a new folder inside this folder. So we can create a new folder. And let's call it Best Store API. Then we need to open the command prompt from this folder. So just here we can type cmd. Let's paste the command just here. So this command allows us to install JSON-Server globally, but I want to install JSON-Server locally inside this folder. Like this, I can configure it later. So just let's delete this parameter. Let's press enter. So now JSON-Server is installed correctly, and to check the installed version we can type npx, then JSON-Server, then -- version. So here we can see that we installed this version of JSON-Server. So here on the documentation website of the JSON-Server, we can see that to store the data on the server, we need to create a database file, and we can call it db.json, for example. Of course, we can choose any name. So the database file should contain the name of the services and the data of every service. In our case, we need just to create the first service, which is products, because we need to make CRUD operations on products. So now let's create this database file. So just here, let's create the file. And let's call it db.json. Now let's open this file. Then let's create a JSON object. So in this object, we have only one key for the moment, which is called products. And it is equal to an array of objects. So I already prepared the data of some products that I will use during this video. So these are the products that I will use, and you can see that we have an array of products. So we can copy all of these products, and here we can see that we have 30 products. So let's copy this file. And we can paste it just here. So let's delete the brackets and let's paste the data. Let's save the file. So here we can see that for every product we have an image. So now we need to add the images to the JSON server. So here on the documentation website of the JSON server, we can see that to start the server we can use this command. If we use this command, the server will start at this port number, but this port number is already used by our React application. So we need to start the JSON server on a different port number. And here we can see how we can change the port number. So we have just to add -- port, and we have to provide the port number that we want to use. Also, we can see that if we want to use static files, which are the images that we want to add, we need to create a folder called public in the folder of our JSON server. So now let's create this folder. Just here, let's create the new folder. Let's call it public. Then in this folder, let's put the different images. So I already created this folder that contains different images. Let's copy it and let's paste it just here. Let's open it. And here we can see that we have the different product images. So now to start the server, we can use this command. So because we installed the server locally, we have to use the command npx. Then let's paste the command. Of course, we can use this port number, but we can also change it. So I will use the port number 4000. So now the server is running correctly, and to perform CRUD operations on products, we can use this URL. So let's copy it. And let's paste it here. So here we can see that we have the different products. So we have an array of different products. So here we can see that we have 30 products, and the last element of this array has the index 29. Also, we can see the product images. So here we can provide the URL of the server /images, because the images are available in the public folder into a folder called images. Then we have to provide the file name. So for the case of this product, the image file name is this value. Let's paste it here. And here we have the product image. Now I will show you how to read products from the server using our React application. So let's create a new component. So first let's create a new folder in the pages folder. Let's call it admin. Then let's create a new folder under admin which is called products. Then in the products folder we can create a new file that will contain the component that allows us to read the products from the server. Let's call it productlist.js. Then let's create and export the product list component. So here we can return a div of type container, which is a bootstrap container with top and bottom margin. Also, we have an h2 element that displays the title of this page. So here we can write products and you can display this title in the center of the page. Also, we have a bottom margin. Now let's create a row with 2 columns. So here we have a row. It is a bootstrap row with a bottom margin and it contains 2 columns. This is the first column and this is the second column. So for the moment the 2 columns are empty. So in the first column we can display 2 buttons. So this is the first button. It has the text create product and it should allow us to create a new product. And this is the second button. It has the text refresh and it allows us to request the server to display the products again. So when we click on create product, we have to send the user to a new URL, which is this one, /admin/products/create. So for the moment, we did not create a route to this URL and we need to create it later. Also, because we are using ReactRouter, we have to replace the A element with link. So let's delete A and let's write link. Of course, we need to import this component. And let's replace href with 2. So for the moment, we can keep the second column empty. Now let's create a table to display the different products. So we can create it after this div. So here we have this table. It is a bootstrap table. It contains the t-head and the t-body. The t-body is empty and the t-head contains these columns. So we have 8 columns, 7 columns for the data, and the last column will be used to display 2 buttons, the edit and the delete buttons. Now let's save the file and let's render this component. So first we need to create a route that allows us to render this component. Let's go to index.js and we can copy this route, for example. So here let's define the path. So we can define the path /admin, for example, because it will be used by the administrator /products. And if we go to this route, we will render the product list component. So here let's write product list. And of course, we need to import it. Let's save the file and let's add a link to this route in the navbar. So for the moment, we have this drop-down list. It contains the products item with this URL. We can change it. So here let's write /admin/products and let's save the file. Now if we click on products, this time we have the product list component. So we have the title, we have 2 buttons, and we have this empty table. Now I will show you how to fill this table with the data from the server. So to receive the data from the server, we have to go to this URL and we will receive an array of objects. So we can use this data to fill this table. So to fill the table, first of all, we need to create a state. Let's call it products. And let's call the function setProducts. So products here is an array of objects. So the initial value will be an empty array. Then to read the products from the server, we can use the fetch API. So let's create a new function. Let's call it getProducts. Then let's call the fetch method. we need to provide this method with the URL of the server. So by default, the request will be transmitted using the HTTP GET method, and it will take some time to receive the response. So just here let's add .then. So when we receive the response, we can execute the function that we will pass to the then method. So it can be an arrow function. It receives a parameter which is the response. So when we receive the response, we have to check if it is a success response or not. So let's add an if condition. So if response is okay, then we can convert the response into a JSON object. So this will take a time. So just here let's return response.json. So this statement will take some time, and when we have the data, we have to process it. So this is what we will do if we have a success response. Otherwise, we can throw an exception. Then let's add .then to process the JSON data that we received. So just here let's add .then. And this time we have the JSON data. So let's call it data. And all what we will do here is to save this data into this state. So let's call setProducts. And let's provide it with the data. Otherwise, if we have an exception or if we have an error, we can add .catch. In this case, we have an error. And you can just display an alert. So we can display the alert enabled to get the data. Now let's render the different products in the table. So just here let's add brackets. And let's convert the products array into an array of table rows. So let's write products dot map, and let's provide the map function with an arrow function. It requires 1 or 2 parameters. We can use 2 parameters. The first parameter will be an element of this array. We can call it product. And the second parameter will be the index of this product into this array. We can call it index. So for every element of this array, we will return a table row. So here we have an empty table row. It contains 7 cells for the data, and in this cell number 8, we have 2 buttons. This is the first button. It is called Edit, and it should allow us to update the product. Then we have this second button, which is called Delete, and it should allow us to delete the product. So here we can see that we have a CSS style that allows us to display the 2 buttons on the same line. Now we need to provide every row with a unique key. So just here in this element, let's add key. And the unique value that we have is either the index, which is the position of this element in this array, or product.id. So we can use both of them. In this video, I will use just index. Then here, let's display the product ID. So between brackets, let's write product.id. Now let's copy this. And in the second cell, we can display the product name. Then let's display the brand. Then the category. Then let's display the price. So the data that we are displaying here, which are the ID, the name, brand, category, and price, are the data that we received from the JSON server. So here we can see that every product has an ID, the name, brand, category, price, then we have description, then the image file name, and created at. So now let's display the image file name, and also let's display the created at. So for created at, we can see that the value is very long, and we need only to display the first 10 characters. So here let's display the image. So we need to add the img element. Then let's add the source. So between brackets we can provide the first part of the URL. And in our case, the different images are available at the URL of the server /images. Then we have to add the image file name. So let's add plus product dot image file name. Then let's add additional attributes to the img element. So we can add the image width, which is 100 pixels in our case, and the alt. So the alt is the alternative text that will be displayed if we don't find the image. Then just here let's display the date. So let's write product.created@. And because we only need the first 10 characters, let's add the slice function. So let's add .slice. Then we need to read starting from the first character. So let's write 0. And we need to read 10 characters. So when we click on the edit button, we have to go to this URL. But because we are using ReactRouter, we need to replace A with link. So let's delete A and let's write link. Here as well we have to write link. And let's replace the href with 2. Then we need to add the product ID to the URL. So we can cut this URL. Let's add brackets. Then let's paste the URL. And let's add plus product.id. So like this we can fill the table using the data of the products array. But first we need to send a request to the server to read the products. So we already created this function, but we did not call it. And we need to call this function only one time when we render the component for the first time. So we can do this using the useEffect hook. So the effect that we want to execute is this function. And it has no dependencies because we need to execute it only one time. So like this function will be only executed one time when we render the component for the first time. Also we have the refresh button that allows us to refresh the list of products. So each time we click on this button, we need to send a request to the server using the getProducts method. So just here we can add the onClick handler. And when we click on this button, we have to call this method. So just here, let's call getProducts. Let's save the file. And here we have the list of products. So we can see that we have products with the ID from 1 to the ID 30. Then when we click on the refresh button, we can see that nothing happens. This is because the data on the server did not change. So now we can update the data on the server. So we can update the data of the file db.json. So for example, we can update the price. And let's update the name. Let's save the file. So for the moment we have the old values, the old name and the old price, and when I click on a refresh, we can see that we have the new values. So instead of displaying the products in the ascending order of ID, which allows us to display the oldest products first, we can display the products in the descending order of ID, which allows us to display the newest products first. So we can use the sort functionality, which is provided by the JSON server. So to use the sort functionality, we can add two parameters, the sort parameter and the order parameter. So the sort, we have to provide it with the name of the column, which is ID, and the order will be descending. So descending is the accepted value to order the data by descending order of ID. So let's copy this code. We need to copy this question mark. And let's paste it here in the URL. So sort will be equal to ID, and order will be descending. Let's save the file. And this time we can see that the data is ordered by descending value of ID, which allows us to display the newest products first. Now I will show you how to create new products. So when we create a new product, we should also upload the product image. But JSON server is only for JSON data, and in this video I will show you how to configure the server to allow us to upload images. So let's go to the documentation website of JSON-Server. And here we can see that we can start the JSON server as a module. So we can create a file, a JavaScript file. We can call it, for example, server.js. We can write some JavaScript code. Then to start the server, we can use this command. So now let's create this file. So this is the folder of our JSON server. Let's create a new JavaScript file. And let's call it server.js. So we will not use this example, but we can copy this source code. So we can click on this button, and let's paste the code in this file. So here we will use the JSON server. Then we will use the database file called db.json. Then we don't need this route, so we can delete it. So here we will use the default body parser of JSON server. And the default body parser is only for JSON data. And because we want also to upload images, we need to use another body parser. So let's go to the browser. And the body parser that we will use is called Malter. We can go to the first link. And to install Malter, we can use this command, npm I like install, then the name of the package. So first let's stop the server. Then let's install Malter. So now Malter is installed correctly. So let's go back to the documentation website. And to use Malter, we can use this statement. So let's copy it. And we can paste it just here. Then let's create the body parser. So we can copy this source code. It is available under storage and disk storage. Let's paste it just here. Then just here, let's add .any. This means that we will use Malter to upload images and also to parse JSON data. Now let's rename this variable and let's call it body parser. And let's use it just here, so we can delete JSON server dot. Now let's configure Malter. So the destination will be the folder where we want to save the images. In our case, we want to save the images in the public folder under images. So we can delete this value. Let's write public /images. Then let's create the file name. So the image file name should be a unique value. So we can delete this statement. And let's add the following statements. So to create the file name and to be sure that it will be unique, we can use the current date. So the file name will be the current date, underscore, and the original file name. Like this, we are sure that we will use the correct extension. Then we will add the image file name to the database. So we will add it to the body, and later it will be saved into the database file. Then we have to provide the image file name to this callback function. So we can delete this value. And let's replace it with the image file name variable. Then let's update the rest of the code. So here we can replace this statement with .post, because we will use it just to handle post requests. And we will use it to handle the route products because we are performing CRUD operations on products. So let's add a parameter, which will be the route. So now we don't need to check if we have the post request or not because we are only processing post requests. But we still need to add the date to the body to save it in the database. So we can delete this. And let's replace it with the following statements. So we need the date. Then we will store in the body and later in the database file, we will store the date using this format. So in the database, we will save also the price. So here we can see that the price is a number. And by default, when we submit data to the JSON server, it will be stored as a string value. So we need to replace the string to a number for the case of price. To do this, we can add the following condition. So if we have the price, we will convert the price into a number and we will save it in the database. So we need to replace the price with a number because we will use this later when we implement the sort functionality. Because when we sort the data by price, we need to sort it as a number, not as a string. Now let's implement a very simple server-side validation. So let's create two variables. First, let's create the variable called hasErrors, which is a boolean, which is initially false. And let's create an object, which is the different errors if we have errors. Then let's validate the data. So if the name is less than 2 characters, then we can set the error to true, and the error message that we will add to the errors object, which is this one, will be related to the name and will be this value. So the name should be at least 2 characters. We will check also that the brand is at least 2 characters, the category is at least 2 characters, the price is a positive value, and that the description is at least 10 characters. So if we have any error, then hasErrors will be equal to true, and in this case we have to return an error to the front-end application. So here let's check if we have errors. So if we have errors, then we will return the states 400, so it is an HTTP code, which means that we have a bad request. Also, we will return a JSON object, which will be our errors object. So the errors object contains the validation errors. And of course, we have to exit this method. Otherwise, we will continue to the JSON server router using this statement. And finally, we need to change the port number. So we want to start the server on the port number 4000, for example. Let's save the file. And let's start the server. So we have to type node, then the file name, which is server.js. So here we can see that the server is running, which is this message. So to create a new product, we can click on this button. So we will go to /admin/products/create, and because this route is not defined, we have the not found component. So now let's create the create product component, and because it is for the administrator, we can create it in the products folder under admin. So here in the products folder, let's create a new file. And let's call it createproduct.js. Then let's create and export the create product component. So we can return a div of type bootstrap container with top and bottom margin. Then let's create a row. And in this row, let's create a column. So this is a column. It will be displayed in the center of the page, and we have a rounded border. Also, we have some paddings. Now let's display the title of the page. So we can create this h2 element with the text create product, and we can display this title in the center of the page. Also we have some bottom margin. Then let's create our form. So just after the h2 element we can create the form. Then let's create the first row of this form. So here we have one row, it is a bootstrap row, then we have a label with the text name, then we have this input field which is called name, so name is the name of this input field, and we will use it to provide the product name. Then we have this span which will be used to display any validation errors. So for the moment it is empty, and we will use text danger, which allows us to display the error message using the red color. Then let's create another row for the brand. So this is another row, and the label we have the text brand, and the input field is called brand, and we will use it to provide the brand of the product. And also we have this span for the validation errors. Then let's create another row for the category. So in this row we have a label with the text category, then we have a drop-down list. It has the name category, and we can see that we have these options. So we have 6 options. These are the values that will be visible to the user, and these are the values that can be submitted to the server. Then we have a span which is initially empty. Now let's create another row for the price. So in this row we have a label with the text price, and we have an input field which is called price, which is of type number. So the minimum value that we will accept is 1, and the step is this value. Then we have the span. Now let's create another row for the description. So in this row we have a label with a text description, we have a text area instead of an input field, which is called description and which has this height. So we have 4 rows. Then we have this span. Then let's create another row for the image. So in this row we have a label with the text image, then we have an input field which is called image, and this time it is of type file, so it allows us to upload an image to the server. Then we have this span which is empty and that we will use for the validation. Finally, let's create the last row. So this is the last row. It contains 2 columns. This is the first column and this is the second column. In the first column we have one button of type submit with the text submit. And in the second column we have another button, so it has the text cancel, and it will take us to the list of products. So this is the route that allows the administrator to see the list of products. So because we are using the React router, we have to replace the A element with link. Let's press enter to import it. And let's replace href with 2. Now let's save this file. And let's render this component. So first we need to create a route to this component. Let's go to index.js. We can copy this route. And the new route will be available at the URL /admin/products/create. So the route that we have here is the URL that is associated to the create product button of product list. So we can see that we have this URL just here. So this is the URL of the route, and the element should be create product component. So here let's add create product. Let's press enter to import it, and we can see that it has been imported. Now let's save the file. And now at this URL we have this component, so we don't have not found anymore. We can go to home, then products, then create product, and we obtain this component. So here we can see that we have this drop-down list which contains these options. And here we have an input field that allows us to upload an image. So we can select one image, for example, and it has been added. Now I will show you how to read the data of this form and how to submit it to the server. So first we need to implement the onSubmit handler. So just here in the form element, let's add onSubmit. And let's provide it with a function that will be executed. We can call it handleSubmit. Then let's implement this method. So we can create it just here. It requires a parameter, we can call it event. And to prevent the browser from submitting the form, we have at the beginning to call event.preventDefault. Then to read the form data, we can create an object of type form data. So we can call it form data, it is of type form data, and we can provide it with the form. So event.target is the form itself. Then let's make a very simple validation, so we can check that all the required fields are provided. So first we need to read the form data as a JSON object. So we can create an object, we can call it product, and it will be the data of this form. So this is an object, and to fill it using the form data, we can use object from entries, and you can provide it with this variable. So we can write form data.entries. So now we can read the form data from this variable. Then let's check that we have all the required fields. So for example, to read the value of this input field, we have to read product.name. And to read the value of this input field, we have to write product.brand, which is the name of this input field. So we have to do the same thing with this select element. So we have to write product.category, which is the name of this select element, and we have to do the same thing with the other input fields. So just here to make a validation, we can check that all the required fields are provided. So we can add this if condition, we can check that we have a name. If we don't have the name, then we will display an alert. So if we don't have the name, or we don't have the brand, or we don't have the category, or the price, or the description, or the image, then we will display this alert and we will exit the handleSubmit method. So this code will not work correctly because the image that we have here is the image file itself. So it will be always valid. So to check that we have an image, we have to check that we have the image name. So just here we have to add .name. So if we have any missing field, we can display this alert. Otherwise, we can display a success alert for the moment. So just here, let's display a new alert. And for testing purpose, we can write just thank you, for example. Let's save the file. Then let's click on submit. So this time we have an alert. Please fill all the fields. Now let's provide all the fields. So we don't have the image for the moment. Let's click on submit and we still have the same alert. So let's upload the image and let's select this file, for example. Now let's click on submit and this time we have the other alert, which is thank you, which means that we have all the required data. Now let's delete this statement. So when we send a request to the server, we can either receive a success message with a JSON object, or also we can receive a bad request with another JSON object, which is the validation errors. So for this reason, we will not use fetch with then, but we will use fetch with async await. So just here, let's add the try catch block. In the try block, we can send a fetch request. So we have to provide the URL, which is the URL of our server, slash the name of the service, which is products. So this by default will send a GET request, but in our case we want to send a POST request. So we need to add the second parameter, which is equal to an object. And in this object we have to define the method. So the method will be POST. Then we have to provide the data that allows the server to create the product. So let's add body. And the body will be form data, which is the data of our form. Then let's read the response. So the response will take some time and we have to wait till we have the response. So just here let's add a wait. And let's save the response into a variable. Let's call it response. So to be able to use await, we have to add async to our function. So just here let's add async. Then once we have the response, we have to convert the response into a JSON object. So just here let's create a new variable. Let's call it data. And of course we have to wait till we convert the response into a JSON object. So let's add await. And it is equal to response.json. So this JSON object can be either the confirmation of the created product, or also it can be the validation errors. And to be sure what is the type of this object, we have to check what is the response of the server. So just here let's add an if condition. So if response.ok, this means that the product has been created correctly. So we can add a command and we can write product created correctly. And in this case, we have to redirect the user to the list of products. Otherwise, we can check the response states. So let's check if the states is equal to 400. So 400 that we have here is the code that will be returned by the server if we have validation errors. So we can see that if we have errors, the server will return 400. So if we have this response, we can display an alert. And we can write validation errors. Otherwise, we can display another alert. So we can display, for example, enable to create the product. Then in the catch block, we can display another alert. So if we reach the catch block, this means that we are not able to connect to the server. In this case, we can write enable to connect to the server. So if we have a success response, we need to redirect the user to the list of products. So we can use a hook from ReactRouter called useNavigate. So just here we can call it. So let's create a function, we can call it navigate. And it is equal to useNavigate. So we can see that it is a hook from ReactRouter. Let's press enter. And we can see that it has been imported. Now let's use this function to redirect the user. So when we have a success response, we can redirect the user. And we will redirect him to the list of products. So the route will be /admin/products. Now let's save the file. And let's fill this form. Let's provide an image. So let's select this file. Then submit. So we can see that we have this new product. Now let's click on create product. So if I keep the form empty, then submit, we have this alert. So we did not send any request to the server. So to be able to receive validation errors from the server, we have to send short values. So let's provide a short name, a short brand, and let's provide a short description. Then let's select an image. Then submit. And here we have this alert with validation errors, which corresponds to this alert that we receive if we have the response with the states 400. And to receive this alert, we can first stop the server. Then let's click on submit. So because we are not able to connect to the server, we have this alert, unable to connect to the server. Now let's start the server again. And let's provide valid values. Then submit. So instead of displaying an alert when we have validation errors, we can display the validation errors below the input fields. So if we take a look on the source code, we can see that we have a span below this input field that allows us to display validation errors for the name. We have another span for the brand, another span for the category. We have a span for the price, a span for the description, and also we have a span for the image. So to be able to display the received validation errors, we need to create a state. So we can create it just here, for example. And let's call it validation errors. And let's call the method setValidationErrors. Let's initialize it with an empty object. Then let's display the different validation errors below the corresponding fields. So we can copy this. So after the name, we can display the validation error for the name. So just here, let's add brackets. Then let's display validation errors.name. So the object that we have here is the errors object that we should receive from the server. So this is the errors object, and it contains the name, the brand, category, price, and the description. So it is the object that will be received from the server. So now let's copy this. And let's display the validation errors for the brand. Then for the category, then the price, then the description, and finally the image. Then let's store the validation errors into this state. So here, when we receive the server response, instead of displaying this alert, we can display the validation errors. So we can call the method setValidationErrors, and let's provide it with the validation errors, which is this JSON object. Let's save the file. Then let's provide short values. Then submit. So here we have validation errors for the name. So the name should be at least 2 characters. The brand should be at least 2 characters. The category is valid. The price is valid. The description should be at least 10 characters, as we can see just here. And the image is valid. So if we provide a valid name, then submit, this time we can see that the validation error for the name disappeared. Now let's fill the form correctly. Then submit. So this time the product has been created correctly and we are redirected to the list of products. Now I will show you how to update the product details. So when we click on this edit button of the product list component, we should display the component that allows us to update the product details. So for the moment when we click on edit, we have the not found component. So here we can see that we are at this URL, which is /admin/products/edit, and then we have the product ID. So now let's create a new component and let's create a new route. So the component that allows us to update the product details is very similar to the create product component. So we can copy the source code of create product. Then let's create a new component. So we can create it in the products folder. And let's call it editproduct.js. Then here we can paste the source code. So first let's rename this component. Then when we submit the data to the server, we will use the HTTP patch method. So just here we can change the HTTP method. Then let's change the title of this page. So here we can write edit product. Also we need to display the product ID. So we can copy this row and let's paste it outside of the form. So in the label we can write ID, which is the product ID. We don't need the span. Then for this input field we don't need a name because we will not submit the data to the server. We will not submit the product ID to the server, so we can delete this. So this input field will be of type read only. So just here let's add read only. And let's change the bootstrap class. Then we need to display the product ID. So just here let's add default value. And for the moment we can display question mark. So later we will replace this value with the product ID. Then we want to display the current product image. So we can copy this row. Let's paste it here. We don't need the label, so we can delete it. We can also delete the span. Let's delete the input field. And to align this column with the different input elements, we can use an offset. So we can copy this offset. And let's paste it just here. Then inside this column we can display the current image. So let's add the img element. Then let's add the source attribute. So first let's provide the URL of the different images, which is the URL of the server/images, and then we can provide the file name. So for the moment let's provide a static file name. Then let's add additional attributes to the img element. So we can display the image with this width, 150 pixels, and here we have the alt attribute. Then just after the input field that allows us to upload a new image, we can display the date of creating this product. So we can copy this row. Let's paste it here. In the label, let's write created at. So let's delete the span. And because we will not submit the data of this input element, we can delete the name. Let's delete also the type because it will be for the text. And it should be of type read only. Then let's change this bootstrap class. And let's display the date. And for the moment we can display a static value. So when we update the product, the image is optional, so we should not ask the user to provide the image. So we need to update handle submit, and let's delete this code. Now let's save the file and let's render this component. So we need to create a new route. So we can copy this route. Let's create a new route. So instead of create, we can write edit, then slash, then we need the product ID. So let's add colon, then the name of the parameter that we will read. So we can call this parameter ID. And of course, we will render the edit product component. So here we can see that it has been imported. Now let's save the file and let's update edit product again. So in edit product, we should read the value of this parameter. We can do this just here. So we will use a hook from ReactRouter, which is called useParams. So let's create a variable. Let's call it params, and it is equal to useParams. And here we can see that it is defined by ReactRouter. Of course, we should import it, which has been done by VS Code, and now we can use this object to read the ID from the URL. So we can copy this object, and we need to display the product ID in the row that we created above the form. So we can delete this static value. Let's write params dot the name of the parameter, which is ID. So the name that we have here is the name that we defined just here. Now let's save the file. So we can see that we are at the URL /admin/product/edit/33, and here we have the edit product component. We have ID is equal to 33, which is the ID that we have here. And we have this static image. Also, we have this static date. Now let's go back to the list of products. So we can click on cancel. Then let's click on edit of the product having the ID 31. So now the URL ends with 31, and here we have ID is equal to 31. Now I will show you how to send a request to the server to read the details of the product by ID. Then I will show you how to render the product details in the user interface. So first let's create a state that will be used to store the product details. We can create it just here. Let's call it initial data. And let's create a function called setInitialData. Then let's create a function that allows us to send a request to the server and to read the product details. So we can create the function just here. Let's call it getProduct. And to read the product details from the server, we will use the fetch method. So we need to provide the URL, which is the URL of the server/products. And of course, we need to add the product ID. So let's add plus, then params.id. Then let's read the response. So if we have a success response, then we will convert the response into a JSON object. So here we have to write, if the response is OK, we return a response.json. Otherwise, we will throw an error. Now let's add .then to read the JSON data that contains the product details. So this data is the product details, and it is a JSON object. And we need to store it into this state, which is initial data. So we can use this method. And let's provide it with the data. And finally, let's add .catch to catch any exception. So if we have any exception, we will display an alert, and we will display the message enable to read the product details. Now let's display the product details into the form. So we will display the form only if we have the product details. And you can see that this state is initially empty. So if this state is empty, we will not display the form. Otherwise, we will display the form and we will fill the form using the product details. So let's go to the form. And let's surround the form with brackets. So just here, let's add brackets. And let's close the brackets just after the form. Then to display the form only if we have the product details, we can add a condition. So just here, let's add initial data and the form. So if we have the product details, we will display the form. Otherwise, we will not display the form. Let's save the file. So for the moment, we can see that we don't have the product details. That's why we don't have the form. And to obtain the product details, we have to call this method. So we need to call this method only one time. To do this, we can use the useEffect hook. So our effect will be this method. And we have no dependencies. So like this, the method will be executed only one time. Let's save the file. And this time we have the form because we have the product details. But we did not display the product details into the form. So now we have to display the product details into the form. So in this input field, we will display the product name. So just here, let's add default value. Then initial data dot name. Let's copy this. And here, let's display the brand. Then here we have the category. Then the price. Then let's display the description. Then the image file name. So we can delete this. And let's write initial data dot image file name. So this property, image file name, is among the properties of the product object. So here we can see that on the server we have image file name. Now let's display the date. So we will display only the first 10 characters of the date. So we can delete this static value. Let's format this a little bit. And here let's write initial data dot created at dot slice. So we will read starting from the first character and we will read 10 characters. Now let's save the file. And here we can see that we have the product details. So we have the image and also we have the date. Now let's update the product details. So we can update the name, for example. Let's update the price. So now we will update the data of the product having the ID 31. Let's click on submit. But here we can see that we have this error. So to fix it, we have just to update the method handle submit. So we will send a request to the server using the patch method. And of course, we have to provide the product ID. So just here we have to update this URL. Let's add slash, then plus. And the product ID is available in the params object. So we have just to write params.id. We can also update the alert message. So here we can write enable to update the product. Let's save the file. And let's update again the product with the ID 31. So we updated the name and the price. So we can see that product with the ID 31 has a new name and has a new price. Now let's update the image of the product. So we can edit the product with the ID 33. We can update the name. Let's update the price as well. Then let's update the image. So we can select this new image. Then submit. So we can see that we updated the name, the price, and we have a new image. In this video, I will show you how to delete a product. So when we click on the delete button, we will send a request to the server to delete the product. Then we will refresh the list of products. So let's go to product list component. And here we have the delete button. So we need to implement the onClick handler. And let's provide it with a method. So let's suppose that we have a method called delete product. This method requires the product ID, which is available in the product object. So just here let's write product.id. But we have here is a statement, it is not a method. And we need to provide the onClick handler with a method. So we can provide it with an arrow function. Now let's implement this method. We can implement it just here. It requires a parameter, we can call it ID, which is the product ID. Then we will send a request to the server using fetch API. So let's call the fetch method. And let's provide it with the URL. So this is the URL of the server /products. And then we have to provide the product ID. So we need to add slash, then plus ID, which is this parameter. So by default, this request will be transmitted using the get method, but we need to send the request using the HTTP delete method. So let's add a second parameter to the fetch method. It is of type object. And then let's define the method, which is delete. Then let's read the response. So if we have a bad response, then we can throw an error. Otherwise, we can refresh the list of products. So we can call the method getProducts. So if we have any exception, we can catch it in the catch block. So here let's add .catch. And let's display an alert. So we can display the message enable to delete the product. Let's save the file. And let's delete the product with the ID 31. So here we can see that the product with the ID 31 has been deleted. We can delete this product, for example, and it has been deleted. In the next video, I will show you how to implement the search, pagination, and sort functionalities. You can find the video link in the description.